everyone, it's Gabby, just jumping on the mic before the episode to let you know that this one is going to be a little bit different. I'm still talking about New England and my wild paranormal experience in Salem, but I wanted to also bring in a conversation about grief and how the paranormal has helped me in my grief journey. So, I'll be talking about my experiences losing my mom. And if that's not something you're in the headspace to listen to right now, it's totally fine. I'll be back with our regularly scheduled programming next week. But yeah, this one feels really important to me. So thank you. A town that welcomes mystics, creates magic, creates mystics. I felt safe, falling into my simple place as an observer, to be absorbed and sit back, watching with an unexpectant gaze, letting their voices fade into distant echoes. Only then was I patient enough, settled enough to see it, to feel its draw. It was a ghost, a dancing flame in a controlled fire, a glimpse into a new, unexplored realm. I saw a fox, a simple creature with curious eyes and a delicate frame. She ran. It was as if I could feel myself unraveling. All light was pulled from the world, rerouted, manifested as a humming red aura. Her steps left behind a trail of ash and melted gold that, if just for a moment, lifted from the grass before vanishing as quickly and inexplicably as she did. I saw the fox, the image crafted, the messenger sent, appearing before my eyes and my eyes only. I left that town with so much more than I went into it with. Never mind that. I left that town able to see how much I went into it with. The fox. This is Mirrors, a collection of horrors, history, and hauntings. My name is Gabby, and I am your haunted host. This is coming out on the 24th, so Merry Christmas to all who celebrate. Happy holidays. We are continuing to talk about New England hauntings, but today's episode is going to be a little bit different for a few reasons. Primarily because I am telling you a personal experience. And it's one of those things that, despite me being a writer, I have tried so many times to put this into words and to make it into a complete story. And I can't. I cannot find the words that truly encompass what happened, first of all, but also the impact that this experience had on me. What you heard at the beginning of this episode was a poem from my book, She Fell in Love with the Stars, which is a poetry book about grief. And that was the only time I was able to remotely express what happened, just because I was really in this flow of writing, and poetry to me, what I love about it is it feels incomplete. It didn't have to come along with any explanation. So I included it in that book um, because not only is it about grief and my own journey with grief after losing my mom, but it is primarily about learning to find magic and welcome magic back into your life, which the fox, as I will talk about in this episode, represents magic to me. So, long story short, I figured I would just turn on the mic and start talking because I just couldn't put this story into words in a way that felt right to me. Also, I am going to be totally real with all of you, which I'm building a brand here, and that brand will be centered around authenticity. So, yeah, I'm always going to be real with you. Um, I have been trying for weeks to sit down and write scripts and record and edit and do all the things, and I just can't. I've been getting so hung up. I've been exhausted and burnt out a little bit. And at the core of that is that it is the holidays. And for a while now, I have been really struggling with my grief. I lost my mom in July of 2023, which obviously was not that long ago. And I feel like I have been coming out of the initial shock and denial, and it is all feeling so real and overwhelming to me. This time of year has just hit me really hard, and I've needed to rest and just kind of take care of myself. When I go through those periods of time when I am struggling, I really do turn to my spirituality and I look out for answers. I had one day where I went to the woods of Gettysburg, which is where I wrote most of my book, actually. I just would sit in the woods and write. And I went to one particular spot and I just like looked out and I was like, please, like, help me try to figure out how to do this, how to make life feel more manageable. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what the next step is. And I'm doubting myself. Um, and I had this realization as I was sitting there. I was like, I want so much from my life. I want to be a storyteller. And I've always had this really deep seated belief that I'm meant for more. And lately, like, that feeling has started to fade, which has never happened to me before. I've gone through burnout before. I've had insecurities and doubts about myself and my creativity, but I've never once lost hope that one day things will work out. Um, and what was different about this moment for me, I feel like I had kind of an epiphany, I guess, just sitting there looking out at the woods. I'm like, I'm always looking outward. I'm looking for something else when I feel like I have a lot of the answers within me. And since then, I have just felt so much more grounded and aligned with my intuition. I don't know, that moment just felt very important to me. So I decided it was time to tell you the story of the fox. This happened to me a few years ago. And honestly, this story I have never really told anybody. Like, yes, I've shared it with people, but I've never really gone in detail and shared every aspect of the story. Like, because if I'm just sharing it in conversation, if we're talking about paranormal experiences and I'm like, oh, listen to this one. Like, I've never heard anybody have an experience like this. And I kind of share it conversationally. It feels just rushed. It's not a complete view of what this was. And I also kind of had this like voice in my head telling me, save it. Keep it to yourself for now. Like, keep it for you. And then one day you will know to release it. You'll know when to tell it and how to tell it. That time is now. I want to tell you this story, not just because this is a paranormal podcast. And like I said, this is a very unique paranormal experience and something that I truly will never be able to explain. And also, it's the most vivid image. I can see it in my head, and again, I can't find words to truly explain it, but it is just so clear to me what I saw. But this is also the space as well because in my time reflecting, I realized like the paranormal has been a huge part of my grief. I think a lot of us are here in this space because we've experienced loss or because we've come here to try to understand something that has no answers. What's fascinating about it is we likely won't have those answers, but we keep coming here embracing that, like embracing that we don't know and we won't know. And that's what makes it so cool. So when you're going through something that is so intertwined with the human experience, yet feels large and existential and unanswerable, I think the paranormal is an interesting metaphor, maybe, or just a way to feel connected to it. I've had this thing where I feel like I'm not grieving properly. You think of girls in movies when they've lost their mom, there's always this cinematic moment of, she's listening to a voicemail from her mom and crying in bed, or like throwing one of her mother's shawls over her shoulder, looking out over the ocean, or like um clutching a photo of her before going to sleep and like one tear falls down her eye. I haven't had a moment like that. And I know that's not a perfect representation of grief. I've also learned that grief is drastically different for each and every person. But for some reason, that was still something coming back to me. And I told my therapist that one day. I was like, I feel like I'm not grieving right. Like, I feel like this is going to come back and bite me in the ass one day that I like am not grieving. And she was like, well, Gabby, like, think about how invested you are in the paranormal. Like, you have a way of grieving that may not look like everybody else's, but it's yours. That really helped me just to think about it that way. Um, that I have this inherent belief that my mom is with me and that she is living on in some way and witnessing everything that I and my family and her friends and everybody goes through because she's still here. I carry that belief with me just because I am in this space and I don't know the answers, but I am open. I wanted to share that in case there might be anyone out there feeling something similar. It just, brought me a lot of peace. And it brought me back to this fox story. So now that I've made all of you my therapist and have mentioned this fox story so vaguely many, many times, let me just get into it. So here we go. When I graduated high school a few years ago, my mom and I did a little road trip and we brought along two family friends. We just hopped in the car and drove up through New England. We stopped in Mystic, Connecticut, Boston, went to a Red Sox game. And then, of course, me being me, um, the main place I wanted to see while we were there was Salem. Obviously, Salem was the site of the Salem witch trials, and it is just now a town that fully embraces the paranormal, witchy vibes, the supernatural, all of it. So that was my main thing I wanted to do. We went there one night. We got tickets for a ghost tour. It was their off season. We got there later in the evening just because of how our travel worked out. So there was like barely anybody in the town, and it was dark. Only like one restaurant was open, so we stopped there for a quick dinner and then went on our tour. This was a ghost tour slash history tour slash hocus pocus filming location tour, um, with also stories about alleged vampires in Salem. I was living my best life, as I'm sure you can imagine. Um, and the tour was fascinating, of course, but nothing out of the ordinary happened. I wasn't even really feeling like the energy of Salem. I feel like, I mean, when I talk about Gettysburg, like there's just this energy to it, like this, the air feels different, and I've experienced that in different haunted places. I didn't really feel that in Salem. So we get to the end of the tour. We're sitting along like this rock wall, kind of like the tour is all sitting there in a line, and our guide is in front of us, facing us. And from my memory, behind him was like this grassy area. There was like little stone pathways, but it was mostly grassy and flat, and also pretty dark. There might have been like a street light or two, but it was pretty dark. And the town was just silent and unmoving, beyond our little tour group. When I went back to Salem a few weeks ago, I it was so interesting to just be in this spot again and to really visualize how it is compared to my memory, which it was very similar. And I'm sure it's been changed a little bit, but yeah, just to be there again was very interesting. So we're sitting there, listening to our guide. He's just giving his little wrap up, like thanks for doing the tour, all that. And I suddenly see a fox. It runs like behind the tour guide, but for some reason I can see it the whole way. Like it's like the tour guide just disappeared, and I could see the fox, and it looked like it had a spotlight on it. Like it literally like lit up this circle of the air and ground around it. And it looked like it was on fire. It was just orange and glowing and looked like it had like embers flying off of it. I'm just watching this happen. I'm watching it move through the grass. And then all of a sudden it disappears. And for some reason, like when I reflect upon this experience, in the moment, I did not think anything of this. I was just kind of watching it like, oh yeah, there's a fox and it's on fire. And then it disappeared. And I remember rationally trying to think about what it could have been, especially like the whole disappearing thing. I'm like, okay, maybe it went behind something. So I'm looking for where it could have gone behind. I remember there was like a little like tree or a bush or something, but if it would have went behind it, I would have seen it again. It just was gone. There were stone archways that were part of, I believe, the visitor center, which again, like, I would have seen it moving through the arches, but it was just gone. And it disappeared before it got to any of these things. It just disappeared into thin air. And then I look over to the right. The fox came from the right to the left. I look over to the right, and there were two people walking dogs. And just like, first of all, I did not see these people at all. And they would have been in view just with their pace and where they were at this point. Like, they would have been in view, but I did not see them at all. It was just like they didn't exist. And the fox would have run right through them. So, in my mind, like, if it was a real fox, the people would have been looking at it. The dogs, even if they were well behaved, I'm sure would have been looking at it or barking, or I don't know. Like, I just, in my rational mind, I'm like, okay, well, that's what threw me off the most, because I was like, okay, but there's people right there that the fox would have run straight through. Um, and like the dogs weren't even remotely orange. I'm pretty sure they were both like had black fur, so it's not like I saw them and mixed them up with a fox. It didn't make any sense. But even like in my mind, like going through these rational questions as I'm sitting there watching it happen and in the moments afterward, I just remember feeling so nonchalant about it. Like, yeah, that happened. Like there was no doubt in my mind of what I saw. And I didn't question like what the fox looked like. It was more just trying to think about where it came from and where it went. Then one of our friends leaned over and she's like, "What are you looking at? Like your face, you look like you saw a ghost." And I remember saying, "I don't know. I don't know what I just saw." And then like as we were getting back into the car, I tried to say like I saw this fox, but it was not a normal fox or any other type of animal. It was definitely a fox, but it looked like it was on fire. It lit up everything around it, and everything else, the whole tour, the guide, those other people seemed to just disappear. I didn't know what else to say about it. And then we hopped in the car, went to our hotel, and that was that. And for the last few years, I've been trying to just understand what this means because there is no doubt in my mind that it happened. Because, like I told you earlier, I can see it clear as day. I can see that box when I close my eyes. I wish I was a better visual artist because I would love to be able to paint this and depict it that way. I didn't know what to make of it. It was just like, yeah, it happened. Like, I don't know. So I've been researching, and every time that I speak with a medium or a psychic or a spiritual advisor of any kind, I ask what this fox represents for me. So I'm just gonna kind of read you what I have learned. I'll start with the legend of the nine-tailed fox. So this is from ancient Japanese legends that believed the nine-tailed fox to have divine status and sees and hears everything in the world. It's an entity with power over evil and was a symbol of abundance and good luck. Also, from Japanese folklore, there are shape shifting fox spirits called the kitsune, which are known to be mischievous and represent wisdom and power. In British folklore, witches are said to have animal companions, one of them being the fox. In Native American folklore, foxes are often connected to fire and the sun, often showing themselves in times of need. Celtic legends call foxes shapeshifters, illustrating their unique ability to slip in and out of places and change form. The fox is often associated with the god Dionysus, who is the god of wine, revelry, and transformation. Through Dionysus, the fox represents transformation, spontaneity, and embracing the unexpected. And all of this ties into just the biology of foxes as animals. They are cunning and incredibly adaptable to different environments. They're known to be resourceful, be able to outsmart their prey. So, what I've gathered is that spiritually, foxes come to you to show you how to transform and be adaptable to changes in life, to remind you to embrace your inner child and be playful, and to embrace the unknown, to embrace the mystery of life. And it's interesting, maybe this is connected, maybe it's not, but I told you we went to that one restaurant, but the only other place open in Salem was this crystal store where you could also get a spiritual reading. And it was the end of the day, so they were booked up. We didn't get a reading. But I remember standing in the store and saying out loud to my mom, I just want some answers. I just want to like understand myself a little bit more because I had just graduated high school a few days before that. I was obviously facing this new unknown of college and just adulthood. um, and I was struggling with an anxiety disorder and depression, which at the time were both undiagnosed. Um, so I was not in a good place mentally. In hindsight, this was also shortly before my mom was first diagnosed with cancer. So there were a lot of weights on me. and some I knew about, some I did not. I wonder if someone heard me, if the universe heard me in that moment and just sent me this fox as a messenger. Because through everything I've researched and everything I continue to research, because I am fascinated by this, I want to continue learning about it. But what I have taken from it the most is that I have the power to face these things. And I have to look inward and trust myself, trust my intuition, honor my wit and intelligence, and allow myself to believe in magic. After my mom passed, I was asked to write her obituary. I was thinking, how the hell am I going to do that? I mean, not only is it hard because I'm, talking about my mom, but also, how was I going to put that woman into words? My mom, Patty Fry, was my best friend. Um, just like the only person in the world that I think saw all of me, like saw maybe even things that I don't want other people to see, but she saw me. I don't know how to say it any other way. And she loved every part of me unconditionally through that. She also challenged me. I'm very serious. I'm an overthinker. I am very anxious, and she like did not take things seriously. She made everything fun and could just laugh and dance and act like a kid. Um, that pushed me, and that's something I didn't really recognize until after she was gone, and I felt like I was getting parts of that back into my life. She was also an amazing educator. She was a teacher for most of her career and then became an educational coach. So she was working with teachers. Heard after her passing from so many students and colleagues of hers that were impacted by her, by just who she was and how she valued other people. She was an amazing partner for my dad. And I saw their relationship and will always like have my own idea of love through them. So all of that is to say, like I did not know how to put this woman into words, except one, and that word was magic. It's like she was magic. She is magic now. I believe she still exists through magic. In the very first episode of this podcast, I talked about how the paranormal kind of came into my life, and then my mom and I really embraced it and would go out, especially to Gettysburg, but to haunted places and just, see what would happen and learn about the history. It was a huge part of our relationship in the last few years of her life, which it kind of felt like divine timing in a way. It was like this thing that has helped me so much. I get to look back and reference as a part of myself that my mom knew of and that my mom was a part of too. It's not, like she got to be there and we got to talk about it, and she hated horror movies, but I would force her to sit down and watch them with me and watch like Ghost Adventures and Sam and Colby and Project Fear, all those paranormal channels and shows I would force her to watch with me. Like it was who we were. And I'm sure she loved it, even if she didn't act like it. But yeah, that was just who we were. Um, and I've learned so much through the paranormal. I'm in this point in my life where I am graduated from college. I don't exactly know what comes next. I am experiencing that doubt creatively, which I continue to challenge and fight through because I do want it. I want to be a storyteller, so I'll continue doing that for as long as I possibly can. And I actually moved to Gettysburg, which I haven't told you guys that yet, but I moved here just to take a few months to really focus in on my writing and be in this space that inspires me so much. I can like walk to the battlefields and I love it so much. But the paranormal means so much to me, because of how it has given me a creative space to keep coming back to, even when I'm struggling with it. Like, I keep wanting to come back here because I love it so much. And it represents community to me. Like, this being able to talk to you about these experiences and have you listen, like, that is so cool to me. Um, it represents the unknown and being able to just be curious, to ask questions, to explore. I feel like we don't respect that enough in life. Like, just to be able to do that is so amazing. Um, and lately, what the paranormal means to me the most is magic. Feeling connected to my mom's magic. Going out into the woods of Gettysburg and seeing that as magic. Being in a place and hearing voices of people that aren't there, that's magic. And above all, learning to see myself as magic. I chose New England for this road trip because there are so many haunted places there, obviously, but because I just felt the need to go back to Salem. And I'll be honest, I didn't, once again, I didn't feel any spiritual energy there. I didn't have any experiences, but just to be there again and to be reminded of that experience, I feel like that in itself was divine timing to just be there in the midst of this chapter of my life, of this internal questioning. But I'm sitting here now and I'm telling you this story. Just I'm realizing that what all of this means to me is learning to see myself as magic. And to everyone listening, to all of the creatives, the explorers, the curious, all those who, like me, are drawn to the dark and mysterious, I hope you know that you, too, are magic. This has been Mirrors, Horrors, History, and Hauntings, produced and hosted by Gabby Hope Fry.